HTML images up next. So what we're going to do here is create a new file called images.html here in our HTML folder. And as usual, let's go ahead and copy some basic structure here so we don't have to do all that work. And I'm just going to rename this title, obviously, images. And we're going to go ahead and do a couple things here. So in the body, I'm going to add some HTML images. Now I've went ahead and I've added an images folder to my HTML folder, which has 3 images in here and some README text because I got these images from Flickr, from a couple people on Flickr using the Creative Commons license. They let you use their images royalty free without paying anything as long as you attribute them in the credits. So yeah, I got some images of carrots, kale, and potato to stick with the theme of our lists that we just created in the last lecture. So yeah, what we're going to do now is go ahead and add an image, and I'll show you how that works. It's very simple. You add an image tag. Now an image tag is a self-closing tag, meaning you don't need to have a pair. It doesn't need to come in a pair. So it self-closes, meaning this is all you really need to write. But obviously by writing image, you need to be able to add some attributes to tell HTML, the browser, what image you are looking for. So the first thing you need to do is add a source attribute, which is abbreviated as src, and then equals. And then in here, you need to reference the image that you want to use. And depending on where the image is in your website folder, will change what you write in the source attribute. So if the carrots image, for example, was in the root, the HTML folder here, you would simply write carrots.jpg. But as you can see over here in our preview, that is a broken image because there is no carrots.jpg in the root. You have to jump down into the images folder. And the way that you do that is first you reference the folder you're looking for relative to the root. So that would be images/carrots. And there you go. We obviously can see the carrots work. Now there are a few more attributes that we need to add to the image tag. You need to add the alt attribute, which is ALT, which stands for alternative text, which is kind of a fallback if the image does not display, or more importantly, if the person using your website cannot see the image, meaning they have visual impairment or they are blind and they're using a screen reader. So in this case, the alt tag will tell them what is on the screen to help them still have an optimal user experience to the best of their physical ability. So it is your duty to always use the alt attribute with every image. And you just describe what is in the image. So here I will just put a bunch of dusty carrots. And that should suffice. Now, the other thing that you can do is optionally add 2 extra attributes to this tag, and that is the height and width tag. Now, you don't have to because the browser can figure out how big the image is. It'll just serve up the size of the image. However, it's better for loading time. It speeds up loading time and makes it a bit more efficient when you add the height and width already in the tag. So the browser doesn't have to do any guesswork. It doesn't have to do that for you. You could actually just tell it straight up. And what's cool about brackets and Coda, if you're using Coda, you could literally just open up the image in the code editor and it will tell you the height and width. So carrots, we have 500 by 375. So that's 500 pixels wide by 375 pixels high. So you would write that like so. Height, and that was, I forget already, 375. So 375, you don't need to write pixels, you just put the number, and width was 500. And that's all you really need to write. Now, if you see here, I could change this, and it will actually change the ratio of the image. Now, you don't really want to do that because obviously it looks bad, and you shouldn't actually scale your images in HTML. You should always keep them the correct height and width. And if you need a smaller image or a larger image, you just find a larger or smaller version. You could do that in something like Photoshop. You could crop the image smaller, or you could get the original image so it's larger. Now, let's add another image here. Let's go ahead and add the kale. That is in the images folder. What's cool about brackets is it automatically gives me the ability to auto-select. Kind of saves me some typing. And alt is steamed kale in a bowl. And then the height and width attributes, I'm pretty sure I could click here and it would tell me 320 by 239. So 320 wide and 239 high. There we go. Let's go ahead and add another image. And then we have the images potato.jpg, alt. This is a bowl of potatoes on a table. And then we have height and width. Go ahead and find out what that is. 640 by 480. So we got 640 wide by 480 high. And those are our three images. Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to put some text here before. Just a paragraph tag. How about that? A bunch of dusty potatoes. Now you probably can't tell yet. If I were to make this browser window larger, you'll see that the images kind of jump up next to each other. Now, why is that? Why aren't they on their own lines? Well, there are two types of elements in HTML, and we have a lecture dedicated to this when we get to it. But there are two types, technically three types actually, of HTML elements. There are what's called inline elements, block elements, and inline block elements. Block elements take up an entire line. So you could see here, this paragraph tag is a block element. It takes up an entire line and has a line break afterwards. So anything before or after it will will be on a new line, because you can't have anything beside this because it's a block level element. An inline level element would be something like, well, let's see here, an M tag. This is inline. Over here you can see it's in line with these images here. It doesn't have, you can even see the border that brackets puts around here just for visual sake. It doesn't take up the whole line. It just takes up the space that it takes, which is an inline level element. It doesn't have a break. An inline block level element are images, and they kind of have both. The best of both worlds. So it is an inline level element, meaning there is no break afterwards. However, they do have attributes like height and width, whereas inline elements do not have a width. They only have a height. So it's kind of a little hybrid element. And you can use CSS to make any element inline block, but again, we'll get there when we get there, so I don't overwhelm you with too much info. So that is why these take up their own kind of their own containing space, and why they don't kind of stay in a single line. Now, what you can do is you can use a break tag, which is BR. Whoops. And that will put a line break after an element. So you can see this kind of jump down. I'm just going to put another break tag here and another break tag here. And now all of these images are on their own line. I could do the same with the M tag, and that will just break it down onto a new line. So that is just kind of a little quick explanation of inline and block and inline block level elements. And that is the image lecture. That's how you do HTML images. It's pretty straightforward, and I'll see you in the next lecture.